Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include any extraneous material on the subject of this special order.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with great honor that I rise today to co-anchor this Congressional Black Caucus Special Order Hour along with my distinguished colleague from Louisiana, Representative Troy Carter. For the next 60 minutes, members of CBC have the opportunity to speak directly to the American people on Gun Violence Awareness Month, an issue of great importance to the Congressional Black Caucus, Congress, and the constituents we represent. Mr. Speaker, on March 7th, 2023, I stood in the well and took my oath of office into this body. My children stood with me. My then 13-year-old son, who was very excited and impressed some people with his dance moves. Less than a week later, my son Jackson showed up at school to find out one of his classmates was dead. He had killed himself accidentally using a loaded gun as a prop to film a music video. My son was devastated. He was devastated again when 2 months later, the school year abruptly came to an end when Sean Jackson was shot and killed minutes after receiving his high school diploma. These are 2 of the 46,728 people who died from gun-related injuries in 2023 alone. They were among the average 13,300 Black Americans who die of gun violence every single year. Sierra Jenkins, Jaheim Dickerson, Devin Harris, Samaya Yalardley, Tyshawn White, Jane Carter, Kenneth Cooper, Micaiah Dickinson, Lorenzo Smith, just some of the names of people whose lives were ended by gun violence, some on purpose, some by their own hand, some accidentally. And too many of our communities are disproportionately impacted by this violence. We cannot allow this violence to become normalized. We must stand together to advance common sense gun safety legislation, invest in community violence intervention programs, and address the root causes of gun violence. Year after year, we go back to our districts, we go to vigils, we watch the news, we see the tragedies, we come back here, we stand for a moment of silence, we give our thoughts and prayers, and nothing changes. But the overwhelming consensus of the American people is that we have to do something. Now, as a state legislator, I focused on addressing the root causes of gun violence. I thought there'd be bipartisan support for that. And to a certain extent, there was. I championed investment in the creation of a firearm violence and intervention and prevention fund with Delegate Marcia Price from Newport News when I was in the state Senate. This program and fund would provide a pathway to research demographics and trends and implement evidence-based solutions to address the root causes of gun violence, because gun violence in Richmond, Virginia is different from gun violence in New Orleans, Louisiana, is different from gun violence in New York City, is different from gun violence in Newark, New Jersey. And so we need to get at the root causes. But for too many of our young people, the root cause is access to guns is very easy. And they weren't taught to regulate emotions. And things that in my age were settled on the playground with a fist are now settled with a gun. And so you can be called a name on social media You can call someone a name on social media, and the next thing you know, you're shot dead. We need to do something to address that gun violence. And I was proud to come to Congress and try to continue to work on that. But in April, the Trump administration terminated nearly 400 grants from the Department of Justice's Office of Justice Programs that support everything from victim services to substance use and mental health treatment to juvenile justice and child protection. These are grants that were used to address the root causes of gun violence in our communities. There have been deep cuts to the Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative, the largest source of federal funding for community violence intervention. Funding that authorized by Congress in 2022 and that has invested $300 million in community violence intervention programming and research. And now about half of those investments have been cut. All this does is invite tragedy back into our communities. We can't let it happen. And for Black people and the communities that we represent, we are only 14% of the U.S. population. We represent 60% of all firearm homicide victims. A Black person in America is 11.5 times more likely to die of gun violence. And while gun violence became the leading cause of death of children, all children, for the first time in 2020, it's been the leading cause of death for Black children since 2006. We must do more. We must do more. Because I can't tell you how difficult it is every time there's a mass shooting, every time someone is shot, going to the grocery store, playing in a park, going to the movie theater, turning in the wrong driveway, showing up at school, after graduation, on and on and on. Every time it happens, my son and my daughter look at me and they ask, am I next? Do you know how difficult that is? Do you know how hard it is when your children who know someone who has died from gun violence have to spend their days in school in active shooter drills rather than learning? Enough is enough. Enough is enough, Mr. Speaker. We must do more. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. It is now my pleasure to yield to the gentleman from New Orleans, Louisiana, Mr. Troy Carter.